of Floyd Street's finest. He is Holy Cross head coach Mark Lieberman. I'm Jack Grossman. Talking more some, off-season stuff. We're in the middle of June here, so nothing earth-shattering, but, doing an occasional pod here. They're talking about, the latest tidbits and stuff. Go ahead, like, subscribe, do all that stuff on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, wherever you find your podcasts, all the things that I normally forget to say. I actually remembered this time for once, which is good. But, Coach, how's the off-season been treating you, man?
It's not bad. Tell me about the bobbleheads you got back there. Are those bobbleheads?
I got a couple. Here. Let's see, we'll grab them real quick.
This will be our version
Yes.
of our pod. We'll have like a cornucopia of bobbleheads.
Yes, it's not a Bob Valvano collection of bobbleheads, but we got a couple. We got a Rick Pitino one from
Oh,
back in
look
the
at
day.
that.
Yeah, we
Look
got a
at that
Coach B
one.
one. Yeah, we got Nick Valvano actually got me this a couple years ago. It's a Tom Crean bobblehead for when he was
Yeah.
at Marquette. And then the Louisville Bats did a promotion a few years ago. And I have never been to a Louisville Bats game without getting a casino cookie. And I love the casino cookies to the point to where we got Elizabeth, the woman who's been selling the casino cookies there all these years. My mom somehow got her to come to my bar mitzvah party and hand out cookies.
That should be the entire podcast, just talking about that. That's fantastic.
Yes, great times, but I well, this is absolutely my favorite one.
It should be. Yeah. Look at
Elizabeth
that.
cookie.
It's got a lot of character. Yeah.
Yes, but got a lot to get through today. I want to start though with some scheduling news that popped up on Tuesday night. Yes, this is Wednesday. I gotta forget what day of the week it is sometimes with job, weird schedules. Wednesday is the start of my weekend, actually, today, for those who don't know, but no one cares about that. But Brian Coleman was on a Twitter Spaces on Tuesday night. Huge shout out to Mac McGavick for tweeting out a couple of these quotes. Got a couple things there that are kind of notable. Number one, looking at the schedule for this year, there's a quote saying about the ACC SEC Challenge. For those who remember, Louisville was not a part of last year. Hoping to be a part of this season with the 15 ACC teams. One of them isn't in it, but got a quote. I got a gut feeling we're going to play Arkansas in the ACC SEC Challenge, which would be, to me, easily the best thing that could come out of that challenge for us, the fans and the media this year, with the John Calipari angle at Arkansas, the Kenny Payne angle at Arkansas coming home. I think that would be something that would be very exciting to see, especially if it was in Louisville, because we know that the fan base would get very, very raucous for that one.
Mm-hmm. That would be tremendous. But you know how this goes. Last year, they were clamoring for an LSU Louisville women's game for the challenge because of Van Lith and all the storylines and how great it would be. Sometimes they like to just play the role of I don't want to say spoiler, but like of a Scrooge of not fulfilling the dreams of the fans, because how could you get any better than Arkansas, Louisville? The storylines for building up to that would be tremendous. Now you got Louisville already set to play Tennessee. I believe it starts this season. Is that correct?
November 9th this season.
Right. So, and again, they're going to challenge themselves. They're going to do what they can. Having that home and home is fantastic. But can you just imagine a Yum Center with Calipari and Kenny Payne, and it would just be, yes, it's must see TV for sure.
It would be phenomenal. I'm hoping, because back when it was the ACC Big Ten Challenge, I thought ESPN did a very good job of putting together the best matchups possible year in, year out. They did not do that with the ACC SEC Challenge last year in the first go around. That you had an opportunity to have Kentucky and Duke play on campus against each other for the first time since the 1960s, and they didn't do it. That to me is kind of that's just airballing a layup to me. They really struggled. They're not having Kentucky play Duke in that one. They can't have that be a game this year because Kentucky and Duke are playing each other in the Champions Classic. But I thought last year the matchups were a little underwhelming. Hopefully they get it right this time around. You brought it up with Tennessee. Louisville has a home and home with the Volunteers. It's really setting up to be a pretty loaded non-conference schedule. You got the Tennessee game November 9th, the battle for Atlantis a couple weeks later, and obviously the Bahamas. And then you already have Kentucky on the road on the schedule, which I got to take about the date of that game here. We'll get to in a minute. But and then you have a potential ACC SEC challenge game. But how exciting is it? You get Tennessee coming in, a team that was in the Elite Eight last year, is probably going to be a top 15, top 20-ish team at worst. That might be even a little, underrating them a little bit there in the preseason expectations. That's been a really, really stable, really great regular season program under Greg Barnes. I haven't broken through to the Final Four, but one of the most respected programs in the country for sure. And you get them on your home floor. To me, I don't think there's a better way to try to generate excitement than a big home game early in the season to where your fans can get into the building, see the team live against a high-quality opponent. And really, these are the types of games that I would like to see more in college basketball in general. So kudos to Pat Kelsey, Rick Barnes are getting that one done to where we can see a really, really early good litmus test to where even if you get beat by a very experienced Tennessee team that brings back not Dalton Connect, but a lot of pieces from a really, really good team last year, you can kind of get that first litmus test of, okay, here's where we are. How far away are we from where we want to be? And how prepared are we for what's going to be the rest of really a meat grinder of a non-conference schedule?
You don't live in your fears, and you could see that Coach Kelsey has embraced that mindset because you have the battle for Atlantis. You're going to be in the ACC SEC challenge this year. You're just going to be. It just feels that way, the way the team is stacking together and whatnot. And then you add a game like Tennessee, and I think that's trending more that teams want to get, and we saw that a little bit more last year, where teams are going to start playing those really good opponents to help them get ready for the tournament, to help them get in the tournament. It stacks up for them to get a great game to build towards that. I remember my first year at Louisville, we had Butler on the schedule to open the Yum Center, and Butler was coming off Final Four. And so like that, and we had come off a year which wasn't great, but were opening against a high caliber team. And that just creates excitement for your players too. So for your players building towards that, knowing you're not going to just play and Division II or teams that you're just going to be able to just roll out the ball, even though that wasn't the case last year. Moving forward, that's going to be the case, that they're going to have some gimmies. So you have a game early on against a really great program. Oh, it's nothing better. Fans love it. The players, the biggest thing, Jack, is the coaches and players can start preparing. So I'm telling you right now, they're already putting in a set, a scheme, something that Tennessee does over the next few months. Even though the players aren't, going to understand that part, they're going to put in concepts that Tennessee will run so they can start getting their players acclimated to what they're going to face.
How would you guys, because I remember during those years, obviously the Butler game was big. You had the Kentucky game every year. But I remember it would be, and a lot of this, I remember Greg Pitino would always say with how loaded the Big East was back then, he didn't want to overload with too many quality opponents early in the schedule. How did you guys try to find that balance of we want to test ourselves? It's a lot more fun for the fans for sure, but also trying, especially in a loaded Big East, I don't think it qualifies as much where the ACC's been the last couple of years. And maybe that frees Pat Kelsey up a little bit more to schedule a little bit more aggressively than what you guys were able to do in the Big East back in the day. But trying to balance out, you want to, get you guys some wins, a little bit of confidence, but no one wants to see a schedule with, 12, 13, 14 cupcake games either.
Some people do.
Yeah.
Some people like, just because of the competition. But you're right, Jack. Back then, it was a lot different. You just were so focused on your conference schedule. It wasn't just Louisville. It was every team was going to be, okay, let's get our cupcakes. Let's build our record up to 10-1, 11-1, 12-1, whatever it is, and then get ready for conference play, where now I think teams realize that's kind of fool's gold. You can get yourself tested. If you go in to conference play at 7-3 or whatever it is, it doesn't really matter that you've already built yourself a resume. Your team is tested. I've always believed that wherever I've coached, I've never been concerned with, okay, well, we're just going to get a win. As a head coach, I want to play really competitive teams and really find out about our guys, because this game does not build character, it reveals your character. So you find out which guys you can trust as the game moves on. Coach Pitino, I'm sure, would change his tune if the landscape was how it is today, where you see now everybody trying to play really good competition. Even some of these mid-majors now are getting in the mix, and that's a part of it as well.
Yeah, I'd say that's great for the sport too. That gives some of the mid-majors a chance to come out and get some of those quality statement wins that you can't get in some of the conferences that they're in, just to be quite frank about it.
No,
but
you're right.
But I do think, because you have a team like Oklahoma last year, raced out to like 11-1, 12-1, whatever it was. The only really marquee game they had was North Carolina, and they got beat pretty handily. And you see them come back down to earth in the Big 12 and not be able to keep that going. So I'm with you. I love seeing those big early season matches. I know traditionally Louisville, early in the Pitino days did that very aggressively, and especially, Denny Crum back in the Metro Conference days that were very known for having some pretty insane non-conference schedules. And for me, I think it's the more you play, the better. It's just fun to watch. I would much rather see Louisville play at Tennessee, play, a battle for Atlantis, obviously play Kentucky, but play, a Memphis, another thing that was floated around on Wednesday night as a series. Get Cincinnati back on the schedule, play some of these regional rivalries. I think that would be really, really fun. Speaking of that Brian Coleman did say on that space is also, again, thank you, Matt McGavick, for tweeting all these out, to where I wouldn't have seen it, to be completely honest, because I was working pretty late last night. But throwing out the idea of a Louisville-Memphis series might be back on the table moving forward as well. Well, to where, they might try to start that next year. I think that's something that, again, Pat Kelsey doing things with the schedule that I think is going to energize the fan base.
Yeah, that's the goal right now. You could see that from the schedule, from what they're trying to do. He's not going to run from any of these teams. He wants to get that going, and it also generates excitement around the Yum, which has been non-existent for 2 years. So this is a way, again, and that's also belief in himself. When you believe in yourself and you know what you're going to do, and you've done it before, you have faith that, okay, we're putting together a monster schedule, but we also know that we're going to have the right pieces to get it done. If they hadn't put together this transfer portal class, maybe the Tennessee game is next year, not this year, because of battle for Atlantis and Kentucky and some other games and so on. So maybe that's the case. But I think he's going to say, all right, we've got this group together, we believe in it, and we can get it done. Just to go back to what we were talking about earlier, I think it was Rick Pitino was never living in his fears, but I also think at times he was not sure about what team we would have moving forward. So that's kind of why we had some trepidation that first year, my first year. The second year, when we went to the Final Four, we had a much stronger strength of schedule going into year two when I was on staff.
Yeah, and I remember the first year was the bridge year, the famous quote.
Famous quote, yes. And made all the headlines. So it's so funny, like a bridge year compared to like the last 2 years. It's just, it's almost like when Obama was wearing the tan suit, and that was like the headlines for like 3 days compared to everything else that goes on in politics. So yeah, there's always something for the media to pounce upon. So
the bridge year resulted in a 4 seed in the tournament and the Big East tournament title game appearance, where you guys were really damn close to taking down Kemba Walker and then the UConn team that won the national title.
Yeah, we had a turnover at half court in the championship game. We had where Peyton, it wasn't on him, but just how we're supposed to break to the basketball, his cut and wasn't anticipated, and they jumped in and got a steal. But and if PK doesn't get hurt, I've said this numerous times. I'm telling you, we make a long run. If PK is healthy, that team is Sweet 16 bound for sure.
Yeah, that's one of the great unknowns for sure, what that team could have done in the NCAA tournament, because it was doing what Rick Pitino teams do, man. Peaking at the right time, play their best basketball at the best time of the year. I got one more scheduling note for you. I just feel like I'm just going scorched earth full nerd, schedule guy at the start of the pod here. But the Louisville-Kentucky game, I feel like I probably care about this more than most other people do, but it's scheduled for December 14th this year, a bit earlier than what it normally is. And I love that date for this game
Okay.
because
Please share.
traditionally the game's been played on a Saturday late in December up against either a New Year's Six Bowl or the college football playoff. And my thought has long been, this is Louisville, Kentucky. This is a game that people around the state of Kentucky put on par with Duke, North Carolina as being the premier rivalry in college basketball. If you want to be treated like a premier rivalry in college basketball, you can't play the game up against the damn Sugar Bowl. or against literally, like I think the most famous example of this is the college football playoffs or in 2019 when Louisville, Kentucky played that overtime classic with the Jordan Wara, Dwayne Sutton led team against Nick Richards, Emmanuel Quickly, that team at Kentucky. That was played up against LSU and Ohio State in the college football playoff. Yeah. Like the nation, as much it isn't going to pay a huge amount of attention to that game when it's up against games like that. Or like the 2015 year when Kentucky was 38-0, Louisville had Montrezl Harrell, was undefeated, was number 1 versus I think number 4 in the AP poll. That game was on ESPN too because it was up against New Year's Six Bowls. That to me is inexcusable and pretty blasphemous scheduling. Instead, last year they put on a weeknight, which I liked a lot more because it can be kind of a lead into a minor bowl, which is a good way to do it. But instead putting it on December 14th, where it's a week after the College Football Conference Championship games. It's before the major bowl season starts, before the expanded CFP starts, to where the only real football you're going up against is Army-Navy, which is a big deal in its own right, but that's not it's just, I'm not trying to slight Army or Navy, but it's a little different than a college football semifinal game. It is. And it's on a day that's really become a loaded day in college basketball to where, well, I'll give you the slate of kind of the games that day. You got Louisville, Kentucky, Creighton at Alabama, Xavier, Cincinnati, Tennessee at Illinois, UCLA, Arizona, and Phoenix, and Texas A&M, Purdue, and Indy. Instead of going up against football games, you're packaging it as it's part of a loaded day in college basketball, a loaded marquee non-conference day in college basketball, to where I think that's a much, much better spot to put the game than where they've traditionally done in late December. I'm hoping this becomes more of a trend for them because other than just the Kentucky-Indiana series, a couple of those games later on in the series are on that weekend. But other than that, they can put it on that weekend every year. And I think that would be a way, way, way better time to put it instead of late December.
I think one of the reasons was it was leading into being on CBS. That was probably leading into another game and having the viewership
Sun Bowl, usually.
Well, that's the point because you have a viewing audience of Kentucky Louisville, and you're trying to keep as many viewers around for a game like that. So that might have been part of it. I knew when we played, it was on New Year's, and it was both games were at noon when I was on staff. So I think it was from a inside the sphere of ratings and the television networks and all the power brokers that run that. I think that was maybe the mindset. But your point is well taken. You have a huge slate of basketball. You're not it's not interfering with football. But I think that was the point because I think they wanted to have the viewership that carries over. That's why when you have a show like
did you guys on coaching staff have any control over when that game was?
No, that's all network based. Yes.
Mm-hmm. That's annoying. That just
it'd be the same thing. Yeah, when the Big East schedule would come out and whatnot, we wouldn't have any control. All you have a control over is your non-conference games that excluding Kentucky. Kentucky was something that we had no say. Now you might try, but I think that was kind of determined that it was going to be a mainstay for late in the year, as late as could be, 31st, and then have it lead in because it was a way to bring in ratings.
The thing I'd always want them to do that I don't think they would ever do, but when John Calipari played Gonzaga in January or February, whenever it was last year, that kind of reopened the idea to me. I think that game would be best played later in the season during conference season, to where you could get more eyeballs on. You get it when the country is truly invested in college basketball later in the year instead of, again, trying to mismatch it, trying to avoid football, all that stuff in December. I know coaches don't like to play the non-conference games late in the season because you're so focused in on conference races, but I think late January or February would be the absolute best time to play that game.
Not
I
going to
don't.
happen. Not going to happen. It's a great theory. I understand
Yeah.
what you're saying, but you hit the nail on the head. You're so focused on where you're sitting in the conference, and you're not going to have like an NBA play-in in the middle of the season where it distracts you in college basketball. We're so focused on that conference that you're not. I understand your point, and it's valid. It's just you're not going to deviate from the fact that you have to focus solely on winning that conference and making the tournament.
I like even in college football, though. I mean, the ACC and the SEC, the Governor's Cup, Louisville, Kentucky is played the last week of the year during the regular season. I mean, you have 5 ACC, SEC games there. Why not? I mean, I remember back in the day, Louisville and Indiana played games in the middle of January in the early 2000s. Kentucky played Gonzaga this past year in February. Why
Well,
not have why not? I understand the conference stuff and all that, but to me, from a marketability standpoint, why not have some of your biggest games, and in Louisville, Kentucky's case, your biggest game during the season? Because this always annoyed me when they would play during the Pitino era, because when did the Pitino teams peak? February and March.
sure.
March. And I thought the quality of the game could have been better. That's why I think, the 2014 game, the Sweet 16, was one of the best played games that the rivalries had, because both teams were hitting on all cylinders at the moment. Louisville, I think, did some things where they should have won that game. That's a conversation for another day, but it's not a coincidence that, to me, a lot of the games ended up being these slugfests that were pretty hard to watch when both teams were still, as I said, Louisville and Pitino a lot of times would, and you guys would be peaking in February. Kentucky, Calipari, with all the freshmen, they're not playing their best ball that time of year. I think it would be better basketball for both teams and would be able to showcase the event a lot better if they were to play it later in the season.
Well, you're entitled to your thoughts and your opinions on
Even
that.
though I
Jack.
know it'll never happen, but
never happened. College football, that's pretty much the end of it. And then you're getting ready for bowl season, where in the scenario for college basketball, you're still getting ready for your conference tournament. You still have some more games that you have to clean up. It's almost a distraction from a coaching standpoint. I know that's not what fans want to hear, but they want to be solely focused. When you get into January, it's okay. We all talk about that. It's conference time. And to have that lingering, and to have maybe you've got a big game against a Virginia, but 4 days later you've got Kentucky, and getting the guys to laser focus in on what you have. You just don't want to have those distractions. I know it sounds that we're all paranoid and we're all worried about, but it's true. College coaches are just consumed with how it's made up and where it's going to be as far as the season gets going, to have some control over how you're preparing for those games. So I'm not, listen, you're not wrong. It's just not going to happen. So just like Danny Hurley going to the Lakers, not going to happen.
I want to get to that before the end of the pod.
Sure.
The best month of the year is here, which is why you need to know that we are partnered with BetMGM. We'll be using BetMGM lines for making all of our picks and predictions, and we'll have special offers for the listeners and the viewers of the Field of 68. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, you can use bonus code FIELD, and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's the best part. All you need to do is deposit and bet $10 of your hard-earned money to get it. This is what you have to do to make it work. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using that bonus code FIELD. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You'll get up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use that bonus code FIELD when you sign up. Most importantly, we have some fun stuff coming up for the rest of the NCAA tournament. Bet insurance tokens, college hoops odds boost, and the thing that I love the most, a nice little parlay boost, as well as a ridiculous array of prop bets for anything that you could possibly imagine betting on. From odds on getting to the Final Four to national championship futures, I'm calling it right now. BetMGM is the king of the prop bet. So go download the BetMGM app. Use that code FIELD and sign up today. And while I've got you, a quick request. The best way to support the Field of 68 content you get for free is to engage with us. Rate and review the pod in any podcast app. Like and share the YouTube videos that you enjoy. Tell your friends about us. It all helps in a world where the algorithm is king. And now, back to the show.
I do need we do need to actually talk about the roster and some of the things like that as
Sure.
well, because Louisville's filled in the front court a bit since the last time we've talked, adding Sean Pryor, adding Kahni Rooths, not adding Coleman Hawkins, as there were the rumors
That's okay.
swirled around. I want to ask you this, because I think there's a lot of different ways to work the transfer portal. And we've seen Louisville with the front court kind of go with all right, we're going to get guys, they're quality players, but it's not the splashy name like a Coleman Hawkins or a great Osibor. And we've seen teams and players use the transfer portal differently. You have those top of the line guys, like this year was Hawkins and Osibor, last year was Hunter Dickinson, Terrence Shannon, Kevin McCullough, those types of guys where you kind of know what you're getting. I feel like the transfer portal, it's not paying for the high-end quality. It's paying for the known quantity of a player is what the transfer portal is really about to where you have all these other guys that you come in and you get these diamonds in the rough sometimes, and you're taking chances on dudes, and it's can you hit on enough of these guys for it to be successful? I mean, Janai Broom at Auburn, as far as the big men go, phenomenal example of that. Not many people had heard of him out of Oregon. We knew he was a good player in the OVC, but I don't know if people thought he would be a preseason All-American coming into this year and give Auburn really, really 3 great years there as a big man. I mean, Oscar Tshiebwe, Kentucky, though he was a power conference transfer, no one thought he was going to turn into the monster that he turned into a UK a couple years ago. I mean, someone like Marcus Domask is an example I always use at Illinois, and Lance Jones kind of being linchpins on those two teams. Domask being a phenomenal scorer that people didn't really think he was going to be able to score at that level. The Big Ten, Lance Jones being kind of the 3-and-D defender that bringing the athleticism that Purdue had been missing the last couple of years. You have these guys that people don't talk about all summer that become major factors on teams, and Louisville kind of went more that route in the front court. They didn't, they obviously the NIL was very, very good to them, and getting guys like Terrence Edwards and the quantity, filling out a full ass roster here in his first year, but notably not really pursuing Osibor and Hawkins, and instead going with Rooths and Kasean Pryor and James Scott, Pryor to fill out the front court to where you're saying, okay, can enough of these dudes hit to where it was worth not trying to pony up for a guy like Hawkins or Umar Ballo earlier in the portal cycle, or again, great Osibor.
Sometimes the best thing that happens is that you get a miss, and then you get a player that wasn't initially as highly rated, and it just works out great. It happens all the time in this business. I've watched a lot of Kasean Pryor this past season. And I'm just telling you, I think he is absolutely tailor-made for the style. His motor is ridiculous. He rebounds outside of his area. He's developed a nice mid-range and be able to step out and shoot the basketball. But he defends, he runs, he plays. He reminds me of the Birdman, Chris Anderson, almost as far as his energy on the court. And I think we'll see, but I think he was a great get for them. When you lose out on the guys that they did, I think it happens in this business. But if you look at overall the bigs that came in, I think they're going to be happy with what they have. I believe they'll play smaller at times as well. I think they'll play 4 round 1. But I think a guy like Pryor is a guy that's going to log 25, 30 minutes a game, and is a guy that can really be a factor because his prowess on the defensive end, he rebounds, and he just, from the outside looking in, his motor is what you want as a coach.
And he's a guy that blocks some shots too. I mean, a 3% block percentage, that's always very helpful to have that rim protection, has a lot of length. And again, over 35% from 3. You take that from a big guy any day of the week. We got I think he's a guy that
And they
I
weren't
think,
playing, Jack. They weren't playing weak opponents. They were in a tough conference.
yeah.
and they played watched quite a few of their games. Tremendously impressed when I saw that Louisville was able to acquire him. I just thought that was a great get.
Yeah, and South Florida again, like the AAC wasn't the Big 12 by any means, but you had Florida Atlantic in that conference, you had Memphis in that conference. UAB's been a good program for a number of years. South Florida went out and won that damn thing. That got out of nowhere. It was very impressive there on that end. So I think Pryor is definitely the one I'm the most excited about. James Scott, I know they have raved in the workouts over the summer so far. They've had a lot of potential there for him as well, to where if it does hit, you look great. It does. And I think, Pryor, again, I'm with you. I think he's a really, really great fit for what the system is, with what Pat Kelsey wants to do, to where you have a big stretch four. You can play him as a stretch five, can shoot the ball, can be a lob threat, the dunker spot, can block some shots, rebound the ball, and be, I think that's the other thing I like about Rooths. I think he can be really versatile defensively, to where I think you can switch a little bit with him, have him guard a couple different positions. Obviously, a little bit on the younger side, coming in as a freshman, and can be a guy that can have for multiple years to develop as well.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing when you come in now as a freshman. That's why coaches embrace and love the transfer portals, because you get guys
Finished
like
product.
Rooths, right? Rooths is his talent is immense, but to understand college level defensive schemes, it does take time. It's going to take a process. His length and his athletic ability can erase some mistakes. But yeah, he's a guy that you want to see fit into that rotation, just because of what he can do. But it's going to take him an understanding, and it's unusual because usually you don't have this situation where you have so many veterans. You come in, maybe there's 3 or 4 or 5 freshmen that you come in with, and you're all on a learning curve. You're all figuring it out, and so on. He's kind of on an island here where there's so many veteran guys that have played so many college basketball games that understand terminology, understand angles, understand how to guard at this level, when he probably hasn't been asked to do a lot of that, where it's just been an offensive type of mindset for him. But he'll learn that, because he's going to have to go against, with the good part about that is he's going against some really good players in practice, and he's going to learn quickly that this isn't the
This isn't
AAU
Peach
circuit.
Jam.
Right. It's not Peach Jam. It's not the AAU circuit. These guys are playing for real, and they're attacking you hard, and you got to keep people in front. You got to be great off the ball. So that's the fun part. But that's how it's changed so much, where there's still teams that rely on freshmen, but like that is going to be tougher and tougher.
Yeah, and having all those experienced players around him, though, while you're not exactly starting from scratch practice-wise every day, even though Pat Kelsey is doing that, other than Rain Smith and the Charleston guys he brought over, but he's laying a foundation with the program. But guys have been in college basketball, they understand that more. But it is helpful to be around all that experience. You can kind of soak that in more
Definitely.
as well, which will be helpful. I like Louisville's roster in the standpoint. I love that their strength kind of comes from the wings, I feel like. I mean, obviously Chucky Hepburn at the point guard and kind of the guards, I like that also. But I feel like you got a lot of guys that are kind of long, lengthy, and can be switchable defensively and can shoot the ball as well. And I think that really fits what Pat Kelsey is trying to do there.
Yeah, when you have some, likes, and sometimes you're like, well, the 2 and the 4, we don't want them switching because of that. When you're talking about a small discrepancy in size and strength and that kind of stuff, when you can do that and switch out of necessity, not convenience all the time, where players get lazy, and in certain actions, whether it's ball screens, whether it's pin downs, whether there's curls, it's much easier if you have likes, where you can take certain things away from teams, because you're not going to find a mismatch. You're not going to find, okay, well, we're going to be compromised because this player is not going to be able to switch in that capacity. So when you have guys that are capable of doing that, sometimes your schemes are where you don't want to. You want to stay attached. You want to say certain things. But when you can, and you have guys that are likes, just like Louisville has built this roster, and that you have, it's not like, okay, we're just going to go out and acquire talent. Let's just go get the best. We want to get guys that are fits. And Coach Kelsey has talked about that. You got to get guys that are fit for what he wants to get done.
Yeah, I think a great example of that is what we're watching the NBA Finals right now. The Boston Celtics. You look at the way that roster is built. I'm not trying to say Louisville is the Boston Celtics, but just the ideal version of switchability and things like that on the defensive end. You have, Derek White, Jaylen Brown, Drew Holiday, and Jason Tatum, 4 dudes on the court more often than not. And then you could bring in, Hauser off the bench qualifies for this as well. Well, of guys you can switch, and they're all interchangeable. They're all great defenders, and you're seeing them play a team in Dallas that is so ball heavy, ball dominant, just trying to get the matchup, and that they won attacking matchups. There's not a lot of matchups out there to attack. Porzingis was really the only one, or Al Horford. I guess Porzingis is hurt now, but Boston would do such a good job in the first 2 games of pre-switching to make sure Porzingis isn't caught in ball screens. That's been really fascinating to watch on my end, to where really they're making Luka and Kyrie go one-on-one up against some of the best defenders in the world. And they're not helping. They're not giving them those open threes. They're not giving them the lob threats. And they're saying, Luka, Kyrie, if you want to work for 20 seconds and hit a tough turnaround jumper every time, and that's how you're going to beat us, go ahead. And I think Louisville obviously isn't going to execute that to the same level as the Celtics, but you can kind of learn a couple things from what Boston's been doing in the NBA Finals and say, how can we implement this with our roster, with all these guys that we have that are more wing type players, to where we can really try to make that be part of our identity on the defensive end.
As coaches, we're always looking for anything we can for an advantage. Back to Danny Hurley, you heard him talk about in the preseason, they watched a lot of European basketball, French league basketball, a lot of stuff that they took from overseas to implement, because he was just a smash mouth, run it down, post up strong, high ball screen, play off of that. And you look at how good offensively they became. So you look at what they did, and they were able to adapt to the pro game. So it's the same thing. We're always looking, as coaches, we're going to show college players pro highlights all the time, because that's what they want to see. So if we show them a half of the Boston Celtics game, which is what college coaches are doing right now, and saying, okay, look at this action. Look what they're doing here. Look how they're attacking this. Look how they're switching out and taking away this shot, or not allowing guys to get to their sweet spots, which is a big part of the NBA too, not letting players get where they're comfortable.
Yeah, which on Danny Hurley, this will be the last thing before we get out of here. I thought this was supposed to be.
I've got a screaming 10-year-old waiting for French toast. So yeah.
well, we'll be quick. I will try to be quick.
We're
I promise.
good. We're good.
But I thought this was supposed to be like the referendum of how college basketball was dead. That's what everyone nationally was yelling about. How this was some great thing about how college basketball's dead. Even Danny Hurley doesn't want to be there. Mike Greenberg went on a long thing on Get Up about it. Instead, he ends up spurning the Lakers, who offered him 6 years, $70 million, which is a shit ton of money, and more money than I will ever make in my life. Don't get me wrong.
I don't know,
but
you've got a bright future, Jack.
Thanks,
but I will tell you this: I was on the drive with Mark Ennis on Thursday, and I'm not a tape guy. I'm not big on all that kind of stuff. But if you want to pull up, I said, just like Mark had said, he would eat a live animal on
NC State made the playoffs.
Right. I said the same thing. I said the same thing about if Danny Hurley takes this job, I would feel the same way. There was no doubt in my mind, and not just because Kamani Young, who's the associate coach there, is a good friend of mine. He's an East Coast guy. The pro game is so different, and just like his dad's legacy, he wants to build a legacy. The guy has a chance to win 6, 7, 8 national championships, and that's important to him. And I knew that there was no chance. So Greenberg should have had me as a guest, so I could be counterpoint, because I was on a diatribe just about the fact that he would not leave Connecticut, and if he did, I would be absolutely flabbergasted.
Yeah, and I love the fact that he's staying from the standpoint of we get to watch him now try to go for that three-peat. I mean, I think it's going to be an absolutely loaded season in college hoops, and we can get into this more down the line, because we have all summer to talk about this, but about preseason number ones and all the talent in the sport and all that stuff. But with all the storylines out there, nothing to me pales in comparison to Danny Hurley at UConn have a very legit chance to be the first three-peat in the sport since the John Wooden UCLA team. That's something I never thought I would see in my life, and the season still has to play out. But the fact that we actually have a chance for it, I mean, even, the other 2 times that we've had repeat champions since UCLA. It was Duke in the 90s and Florida with Billy Donovan. They lost their cores after the second championship. As I'm not saying that's a fault to Coach K or Billy Donovan. I'm just saying, guys graduate. They go to the NBA. That's what happens. For Dan Hurley to be able to lose as many pieces as he did off the first championship, come back, be even more dominant the second time, and now you bring back Alex Caravan, you bring in Liam McNeely, 5-star freshman. Hassan Diarra was the Big East Sixth Man of the Year last year. Samson James is kind of poised to follow in the footsteps of Sanogo and Donovan Clingan. Aiden Mahaney from St. Mary's. You're going to have a team that's going to be, some people have him preseason number 1. I would probably give that nod to Alabama right now, but it's going to be in that top 3, in that top 4, the AP poll preseason, to where you're looking at it saying, damn, they have a shot to do this again, which is really, really incredible to see. And I think it's really, really fun for the sport to really have a type of prolonged dynasty potential that we haven't seen in about 50 years in college basketball, which is just
it'll also be fun to see how they evolve next season, just becoming such a dominant offensive team. Where's the growth going to be next year? Because they're working just tirelessly right now on, okay, how can we improve? That's the one thing that you will not see from that team. They won't be stagnant. They're going to continue to try and improve and say, okay, how can we get better off the last 2 years? That's going to be their mantra.
Yeah, and it'll be wild to see it start to get much better than what they've been, especially last year. When I'll give you this, you're the only team to play within single digits of them last year in the last 6 weeks of the season.
Seton Hall or St. John's?
It was St. John's in the Big East semifinal, and I think it was 95 to 90, 96 to 90, something like that. Well, I would argue that was the best played game and the most entertaining game to watch of all of March. That one with Patino and Danny Hurley going at it. But that's all we got there. I'm going to let you go. One last thing. What type of bread are you using for the French toast?
Okay, look, I understand. I don't have any challah bread here, which is how. Look, stop, Jack. If one person knows, you and I know, the only way to make a true French toast is with some challah bread. Now, she can't hear. It's going to be your basic white bread for today, but she's had it before, and we just I did not pick up any challah bread. So yes, you can.
That's disappointing. It is.
Yeah, it is very disappointing.
But
you should be very disappointed in me.
Yeah.
I know. I had to tell the truth. I couldn't.
I would be more disappointed though if you didn't know that the challah was the best way to do it.
The challah's the way to go. That's all I grew up on. So yes,
you go with any. You put any powdered sugar on it.
Of course, you gotta go. Of course, powdered sugar and the challah bread. I mean, that is a staple of breakfast for you and I, especially growing up.
Oh, absolutely. Nothing beats it. Well, Coach, appreciate you taking the time today. We'll catch up here in the next couple of weeks again as, more news and tidbits and stuff pile in here as the offseason rolls along here. For Floyd Treat's Finest, he's Coach Lieberman. I'm Jack Grossman. We'll catch you next time.